Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Red Tail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Thursday weekly webinar. My name is Jonathan Maddock. This week, we are going to be talking about how to handle canceled appointments. So the goal of today is to make sure that the time that you are scheduling does not go to waste. A lot of times we're talking with advisors and they're using activities, and unfortunately something comes up with the client and they either cancel or they have to reschedule. And your first instinct is to probably just delete the activity, right? You're like, I don't need it. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. Well, what happens if you start deleting, you don't really know, kind of where your time should have been spent, or maybe, hey, maybe I'm not filling up my time as much as I should, when really you did. You planned for it, you had an appointment scheduled, and then somebody didn't come in. There was actually an advisory office that we were working with that found that Friday afternoons, he had a lot of canceled appointments. I probably could guess why. It's Friday afternoon. And so, those types of things, he was able to kind of implement something like this, and he was able to track and figure out that Friday afternoons were not a time that he should be scheduling, and that more of maybe an open office hours type thing. So to go ahead and get started, we're going to go ahead and jump into the CRM. So again, our end goal is to make sure that if we have an appointment that's either canceled or rescheduled or something like that, that we are able to then go ahead and run a report and see, at a later date, was this canceled? Was this rescheduled? Are there any, offenders who are doing it on the regular basis? So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to head to the top right-hand corner, and we are going to click our name in the top right-hand corner. We're going to go to manage your account. And you guys are able to, just making sure. And we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and we are going to go into manage database lists. So we're going to click that. And the list that we're going to be looking at is going to be activities and notes, and what we're going to be looking to adjust is the categories. So what we're going to be doing here is we want to make sure that we're labeling the activity that was canceled or rescheduled, or whatever it may be, maybe even a no-show, right? Whatever it is, we can go ahead and label that activity as such, so that way we can run a report based off of it. But we need to build that first. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my managed database lists, and I'm going to go into under activities and notes, I'm going to go into categories, and you're going to see that I'm going to create a couple. And this is going to be up to your office to decide on which ones you're going to actually use. So the first one can be maybe canceled and no-show. You could also break these off into two separate categories, because I think a canceled appointment is much different than somebody just not showing up, right? That's a little disrespectful, right? You could at least have the courtesy of giving me a call. So you can either break these up or you can keep them the same. And then the other one that I would take a look at is something like rescheduled, right? So that way I understand, hey, this was canceled, but we've gone ahead and adjusted, and we've already rescheduled to another date. So we don't need to worry about possibly reaching back out to the client. This one has been rescheduled. So once we have those created, we can then go into our calendar, and we can start talking about what that process is going to look like. So here on our things to do today and on our today page, I can either access it here, or I can go into the calendar, and either one is going to work. Whatever we're going to do is we're going to pull up a scheduled activity. And right here, we have a client review with Clark Kent. Now, I don't know why, but he always seems to be running into trouble. So he actually has to reschedule quite often. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go into this activity. And again, you're going to see that it's pretty much populated. It's got a start date and then a start time. And the current category is going to be activity type is going to be client review, and the category is client review notes. Now, the first thing that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to, on today's activity, we're going to go ahead and make note that Clark Kent had to reschedule. So I'm going to go ahead and add a link note here. And I'm going to say Clark ran into some trouble and needs to reschedule. Now, at this point in time, if the client is calling into you, you can then kind of decide whether you're going to reschedule right on the phone, or, hey, I actually, now's not a good time. It was actually an emergency. I need to give you guys a call back. Or, hey, can you call me next week to reschedule this appointment, right? So if that's going to be the case, if you need to reach back out, you may go ahead and put that in the notes, right? Hey, needs to be rescheduled. I can't spell it all today. Rescheduled for next week. And again, you can then categorize that note. And I'm going to go ahead and say maybe rescheduled or canceled appointment, whatever it may be, whatever you decide. I'm just going to use that one. So I'll go ahead and add that note. So now I have, if anybody takes a look at this activity, I kind of have more of a running dialogue as to why we canceled it or why it has the category that it has. Now, again, I mentioned this at the very beginning of the webinar. We had talked about a lot of people want to go down here and they want to hit delete. They want to get it off their calendar because it didn't happen. But I don't think that that's the case. What we should be doing, and this is a way that you can go ahead and either reschedule, or you can just kind of capture it and leave it on the calendar so that you understand that you did the due diligence of scheduling. You can actually hit save and clone. Now, by hitting save and clone, what's going to happen is it's going to add those correct details. This is linked to a workflow. That's not good. And then what's going to happen is it's going to essentially put two activities right on top of one another. Okay. So the original one that we had, we hit clone, and then it puts another version of it right on top. So for this one, we can then go ahead and we can either reach out to him, or what we can do is we can, with this activity, we can create the activity to call back to Clark next week and say, hey, you wanted us to reach back out. You canceled the appointment last week. Something came up. Is now a good time to reschedule? Do you know what your schedule looks like next week? Or what you can do is, if on that initial phone call when he called to cancel, he said, hey, actually next week, next Thursday works best. I'd love to do it then. Then what you can do is you can use this cloned activity to then schedule either going forward or schedule maybe that next follow-up call to go ahead and get that scheduled. So essentially what we have is we have the original, and now we have a new activity sitting on top, and we're going to do something with that new activity to decide whether we're going to either schedule the new appointment or we just need to reach out to them and make that reschedule call. So here, we're going to use a scenario that Clark said that next Tuesday on the 17th at 10 a.m. actually works best for him. And we do 1.5 hour long meetings. So what we can then go ahead and do is we can adjust these to the way that it sits so everything looks good. I'm going to save this activity. Once I save this activity, it's going to then bring us back to I made a mistake. I did it out of order of operations. So this is a good learning opportunity. If you don't do this in the right order, what's going to happen is it's not going to work appropriately. So what we can then do is I want to show you the right way to go about it. So I'm going to click into this activity here. The first thing that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to make adjustments on the initial one. We're going to adjust it to rescheduled. So we're going to say this one is rescheduled because, again, we want to keep that initial due diligence. We said this was at 11:15. This was linked to Clark Kent. And Clark Kent. There he is. We're going to add that note. Clark rescheduled for next Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. And we'll go ahead and select this activity, add note. Okay, so now we've added the note, we've gone ahead and adjusted the category. Now I'm going to hit save and clone. You'll see that again, it's going to do this. It's going to put another activity on top of it. Then what I can do is I can adjust this date to the date that we have next week. So we think we said 11:30 a.m. So we'll say 11:30 a.m. And we're going to change this back to client review, right? Because we saved the first one. And now we'll go ahead and put this to client review notes and this to client review. So now our initial one has been adjusted with the note, and then we go ahead and put one on top of it. Now this is going to be the one that's on top is the one that's going to be scheduling it in the future. So we're going to hit save activity. It's going to bring us back to the original one that we just had, and then we can hit save and complete. So again, we really just went ahead and created from the initial activity that we had. We said, hey, this one needs to be rescheduled, so I'm going to clone it. And then I'm going to reschedule with that clone for a future date. And now I'm going to complete the one that has been rescheduled, or the initial activity, so that way I have it for the history, and that my calendar will go ahead and reflect that we had spent that time. So if I go to actions and I say show completed, you're going to see that staff meeting right here was completed. And so then that way we know that we didn't lose any of that history, and that we can go ahead and take a look at it in the past. Now, if you're doing that appropriately, you can then go into reports and start extracting some of the data and seeing who's doing it on a regular basis. Who do we need to maybe adjust the way that we schedule with them? And again, I'm sure not all of your clients, maybe none of your clients are like this, but just in case they are, because I know that we've talked with offices that do have some reschedules and things like that, that then they can take a look back in the past. So what we would do is we go to reports. We're going to go to activities reports, activities by contact. From there, we're going to see all of the activities for a specific time period. So we're going to head over to the top right-hand corner. We're going to go to filter because we want to see maybe a date range. And let's see everybody who's canceled this whole entire year. So I'm going to say, January 1st to September 13th. It's crazy how this year has flown. We're going to go down to status. We're going to say open and completed, just in case you're somebody who doesn't complete your activities, which no. And then what we're going to adjust is we're going to change our activity category. We're going to move that down to canceled and no-show. Now I can apply the filter, and this is going to show me all of the canceled appointments that I've had for the entire year up to this point. Then we can maybe take a look at the linked contacts and say, all right, Reed Richards has missed 4, which makes sense. He's a superhero, right? He probably gets pulled in a number of different directions, fighting Dr. Doom and all that. Or, what you can also do, and this is what I've seen done with another company, another advisory office, is they changed all of every week they had a scheduler. And what they would do is anytime something needed to be rescheduled, they did exactly what I had just mentioned. They would have a note category or an activity category of needs rescheduling, and they would change the category to needs rescheduling, and they would save and complete that initial activity. And then what they would do is on Fridays is when they would do all of the rescheduling. So they didn't do it throughout the week. They'd have a scheduler kind of set some time aside on Friday, and they would just give people a call on a Friday and say, hey, looks like you canceled your appointments, or hey, looks like you missed your appointment, or I'm sorry that you weren't able to come in on this week. What's another day that works for you? And what she would do is the scheduler would just then very quickly be able to point in the week range. So they would go to the week that they were at and say, show me everything from Monday to, I guess Friday. show me everything that needs rescheduling or rescheduled or whatever it may be. Let's see if we have some in here. And then she would hit apply filters and she would see 2 in here. And then she could go ahead and she would just call Rebecca Allen and Clark Kent and say, hey, let's go ahead and reschedule those. So that way you're not having to do it throughout the week. You're doing it all at once at the end of the week. And the reason why they did it on Friday is because just in case, somebody scheduled, you start doing a bunch of them on a Wednesday and then 2 people cancel on or reschedule on a Friday, then you're having to do the same thing. So again, just a couple ways to think about it, but overall it should help you with monitoring those canceled or rescheduled appointments. So to recap, we're going to make sure that we create an activity on the calendar for our initial event. We're going to create an activity category that is going to be, or activity categories, which would be canceled, no-show, or possibly rescheduled, whatever works best for your office. And then what you're going to go ahead and do is, as you have a rescheduled or canceled appointment, you're going to make sure that you go into the initial activity. You're going to hit save and clone. And what's going to happen is going to create another version of that opportunity. You're going to make adjustments to it. You're then going to reschedule on that cloned version of the activity. And then you're going to save the initial one so that you keep that as history as, hey, I did schedule, I did make time, whatever it may be. And then you can look forward to the future with that new activity to remind yourself that you do have an appointment coming up. And then if we need to, we can go ahead and run reports, activity reports, to see all of those different types of no-show, cancels, whatever it may be at a later date.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.